A narrow ship cuts across the Aegean. Behind it lies a homeland of rocky soil and rising tensions. Ahead, an unknown coast. On board are farmers, craftsmen, a handful of armed men, and a sacred flame taken from their city's hearth. They are not explorers in search of glory. They are leaving because something has broken at home. Between the 8th and 6th centuries BC, thousands of Greeks crossed the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, founding new cities from Sicily to Asia Minor. But why did they leave? Was it hunger, overpopulation, political strife? Or was it opportunity, the promise of land, trade, and power? This was the age of Greek colonization, a movement that would permanently reshape the ancient world. To understand this movement, we must look at the fragile world of early archaic Greece, a world of small communities, limited land, and growing social tension. Population was rising, land was limited, and power was concentrated in the hands of a few aristocratic families. Land accumulated in the hands of a few families. For small farmers, survival became harder each year. Many fell into debt. And debt in early Greece could mean losing not only your land, but your freedom. People do not abandon their homeland lightly. For thousands to leave, the pressures must have been immense. Popular discontent grew more and more, causing ordinary free citizens to seriously consider leaving their homeland for other regions, where they could live comfortably and participate in the exercise of power. The same way of thinking also possessed those wealthy people who did not belong to the inner circle of the ruling aristocracy. Seeing this, the wealthy aristocrats realized that they had to help those interested in leaving in order to be able to maintain themselves in power. On the one hand, the people who resented them, and on the other, an ambitious demagogue who would deprive them of power. The emigration of a large part of the population could prevent the emergence of violent opposition movements. Before the journey to find a new homeland began, the settler was appointed, that is, the one who would found the colony. The election of the leader was made by the ruling class. The settler was one of the aristocrats who did not belong to the narrow circle of the oligarchy, and who was now given the opportunity, as well as any other of his kind, to exercise power in a city. The Metropolis equipped the ambitious immigrants with ships, food, and other supplies. As we see, the dominant political group of the city did everything it could to get rid of its potential or real political opponents. However, according to another view, the establishment of a colony also meant reconciliation. It should not be overlooked that the immigrants transferred the fire that burned from the sacred hearth, i.e. the Prytaneon, of the Metropolis to the new Prytaneon. They brought with them their religion, language, legends, and customs. They built Greek temples. And this shows that they maintained some relations with the mother city and carefully preserved the bond of kinship with the mother city. As far as political organization is concerned, the colonies were independent, as they were new cities. The settler was responsible for the organization of the city, the distribution of land, the construction of temples, and the establishment of laws. However, the settler often copied the institutions of the mother city. Numerous colonies were founded in eastern Spain, southern France, Sicily, South Italy, and the Black Sea. The economic boom brought about by the Second Colonization gave merchants and artisans the opportunity to acquire great wealth. The nobles also benefited, supplying the markets with products from their estates, and the industries of the time with raw materials from their quarries and mines. However, those who benefited most from the changes brought about by colonization were the artisans and merchants. The crafts needed labor, which was difficult for that period, so they resorted to the solution of slavery. With the colonization of areas such as Thrace, the Black Sea, and Asia Minor, more slaves could be found. The increasing import of slaves led to the reduction of the wages of free workers and to the saving of many profits by the craftsmen. The institution of slavery ensured a cheaper and constantly available labor force. All these changes had the consequence of creating in the cities a class superior to the common people and inferior to the oligarchy. This middle class included merchants, artisans, and hoplites. The rise of commercial exchanges, which particularly benefited merchants and artisans, transformed the aristocracy based on blood origin into aristocracy based on money. The oligarchic class at first did not pay attention to the appearance of these newly rich. However, some nobles, seeing that they were gradually losing their monopoly of power, began to associate themselves with them through marriages and consanguinity. The middle class thus began to be assimilated by the upper, but also by the lower, thanks to the misfortunes that afflicted agriculture and manual labour. What is then observed is the demand of the lower strata of the oligarchy to demand the recording and codification of the laws, which until recently were not accessible to everyone in order to limit the arbitrariness of the aristocrats. A demand that in some cases was carried out following uprisings. The work of codification was undertaken by personalities known as legislators, such as Zaleucus from Locri in southern Italy, Charondas of Catania, Pittacus of Mytilene, Draco and Solon of Athens. As for the demands for the acquisition of political rights, these were partially fulfilled after fierce struggles of the demos against the oligarchy, with the implementation of the timocratic regimes, in the framework of which power is distributed according to income. The timocratic regimes gradually contributed to the limitation of the power of the oligarchs, and sometimes to the creation of the first democratic institutions. Of course, this was only the beginning. The people constantly fought for the reduction of the privileges of the ruling class, while the latter fought to maintain its exceptional privileges. These were, in general, the first political consequences of the Second Greek Colonization. What followed the aforementioned socio-political tensions was, in many cases, the rise of tyranny. However, this regime proved to be, in most cases, a rather transient phenomenon. As with the death of the tyrant, the regime would sooner or later fall, although tyrannies were established in Greek cities in later centuries. Tyranny gave way to democracy, not without tensions, and thus a new chapter opened for ancient Greek history.